on that particular Mass, he talked about the beatific vision and the church triumphant, the church suffering, and the church militant. And it never had clicked before. And there's just something about Catholicism, and it just like all exploded and unraveled, and like I was able to see like what this faith is that we converted to. You know, I really was able to take it in. It was like, wow, this is like a mystical universal church that we're in.
Okay, so this week I have Brian with Catholicism, the Catholicism himself, live in person. So Brian, if you want to introduce yourself, I feel like I already introduced you for everyone, but
yeah, no,
introduce yourself.
It's pretty good. I'm Brian. I'm from Catholicism on Instagram. I make a bunch of memes. I've written a couple of books. My books are totally different from my memes. My memes are humor and, you know, funny and knee slapping sometimes, and my books are very grim and dark and gothic.
Nice. Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay, so I've seen you share a couple of times about your books. This may be bad. I'm telling on myself. I've not gotten one and read it yet.
It's fine. It's totally fine. I've got like a stack of like 30 or 40 books people send me to read, and I haven't gotten to most of them.
Nice. My wife always jokes that like I need to quit. I'm really, really bad about I'll read halfway through a book and then set it down and never read it again. But I don't know. And then I pick it up like 5 years later, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember
I get on kicks where I get too into like a particular genre of books, and I'll finish them out and everything. But recently it was Russian literature, and those guys wrote a lot, and all of their books are like 1 million words a piece. So I've been stuck in the middle of that. I've taken a little bit of a hiatus from reading though, so I don't know. Whatever jumps out at me first, that's who gets it.
Yeah, nice, cool. Well, awesome. Well, I figured I'd start off asking you, because I know you converted to the faith from Protestantism. So I guess if you want to talk a little bit about that, because I'm a convert as well. So it's funny because with my Instagram page, I originally started off with the podcast, and then I was like, yeah, I got to have an Instagram page because that's like the thing you do. Yeah. And then I made one meme that really took off. And I was like, I guess I'm a meme page now. So now I'm kind of like a blend of the two. I am no meme expert by any means.
Yeah, that's funny enough. That's exactly like the same thing with me, except for with books. So it was, I think it was All Souls Day or All Saints Day. I forget, but I had already converted, and we can get to that. But in particular with my page, I had a second conversion, you know, like a true conversion. My first conversion was sort of like historical, you know, just like deduction and like, you know, like the church is the church. Like I've got to join this church. My ancestors were Catholic. I'm going to be Catholic. That was the kind of mentality I had. Second conversion, what I'm referring to before I started my page, was a conversion of the heart. And I was at All Souls Day or All Saints Day Mass. Father Bean, he's like a local mystic. If you guys are ever near Leeds, Alabama, check him out. It'll be the most interesting homily you've ever experienced. But on that particular Mass, he talked about the beatific vision and the church triumphant, the church suffering, and the church militant. And it never had clicked before. And there's just something about Catholicism, and it just like all exploded and unraveled. And like I was able to see like what this faith is that we converted to. You know, I really was able to take it in. It was like, wow, this is like a mystical universal church that we're in. And it was really like a bomb went off. That's how my parents describe it. Because I was trying to talk to my dad after Mass. My dad, me and my mom, we all went to the same mass together. I was trying to talk to my dad about it because my dad is like my spiritual advisor throughout my life. We're very close spiritually. I was like, this is so cool. And I was trying to talk to him, and they were like in a hurry to get home or whatever. And he kind of blew me off, which he doesn't usually do. He was in another place or something. And he remarks that my mother was like, Brian was trying to talk to you. He was like fired up. He was like on fire for God, and you weren't talking to him. So she chewed him out for that real good. But anyway, after that experience, I think that was like 2018 maybe. I had been married with my wife. Just married. I've only been married once, but I was married to my current wife. The weird wording, but so I told her, um, or I didn't tell her anything. I got super on fire for things, and like we had been married for a few years and we hadn't produced any kids. Not the most pious and devout practicing Catholics, if I'm being honest. TMI, I don't care, whatever. This is part of the conversion.
That's
But
fine.
I really had it on my heart for a few years, even before then, to write a pro-life dystopian fiction novel. And the first one I threw in the trash can, and it was about men becoming pregnant because all the women were on birth control and no women would have kids anymore. And so, like, nature, like this sort of Jurassic Park thing happens where men become pregnant. And I titled it Seahorse Effect, and I wrote like 60,000 words. And then I Googled Seahorse Effect just to make sure nobody had stolen the book or whatever. And there's a play out there somewhere called The Seahorse Effect about men getting pregnant. And I was like, well, dang it. So I just trash canned the whole thing. It sucked anyway. But fast forward back to my reconversion. I already had like this mission in my head to write a pro life novel or series or whatever. And so after that mass, I was like, I need to get to work. And it motivated me more than ever to start writing this pro life novel. And while I was writing this pro life novel, I myself became more open to life. And, you know, uh, 2 + 2 = 4. My daughter was conceived,
Nice.
and that's just how that worked. And so I was writing this book and I was almost finished with it. I was like, I need like a platform or something because my dad was always telling me to get involved with YouTube, and I was like, I don't know if that's my thing or whatever. And then he was like telling me to get on Instagram, and so I just made an Instagram page, and it was on the feast day of Immaculate Conception. I made this meme page, and it was also the same night that I found out that Kristen was pregnant, who is my wife, and it was just like this mystical experience. I don't know, and I'll never forget it. But the first post I made was of Mary, the Immaculate Conception picture that everybody uses,
Mm.
and I didn't know where it was going to go. I definitely didn't think that there'd be over 100,000 people follow it one day, or that it would, make me friends all over the earth.
Yeah.
It's really a crazy thing. But anyway, I started the page because I listened to my dad's advice, and I said, I really need some kind of billboard to, have my books on, because otherwise grandma's going to read it, my dad's going to read it, and then, it's just going to collect dust somewhere. So
Yeah.
I wanted more people to read it because I think I'm a pretty decent author. And so I finished the book, I found an editor, published it, and yeah, that's I think that's my true conversion experience. And the page, it just morphed. I realized that I had my dad's humor, and I just ran with it, and it shifted from like a Catholic page to just a meme page. But I don't know, it's been a really fun time.
Yeah.
That's my personal conversion, my more heart to Jesus conversion. But
Yeah, that's interesting you say that because so I had a somewhat similar experience. I wasn't already in the church when I had like this conversion of heart because I like through my conversion process, I studied Catholicism for like 8 years before coming into the church. So I always tell everybody I took like the super duper long
it's pretty
now
crazy, man.
OCIA class. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I like the
aren't
Protestant
you
that
aren't you my age as well?
I'll be 30 on March 31st. So
I'm
you know.
older than you. That's wild.
Are
You
you?
spent 8 years looking into the church. That's pretty crazy.
I'm a slowpoke, man.
Yeah,
No.
wow.
So, well, part of that was because the church that I grew up in, even now, like it's funny because sometimes they'll say like Matt and now his family are absolutely going to hell, like no question about it. Because Matt's a Catholic who knows what the church believes, he knows what they teaches, and he says he agrees to all of it.
Mhm.
So this whole this whole time I was like, that's why I took 8 years because I was like, man, like I kind of feel like like the Catholic Church is the church Jesus established, but I also have these people over here saying if you convert, you're going to go to hell. And I don't think that I want that very much. So like I
Yeah.
want to make really 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 sure um so like my catechism book, I have a catechism on my bookshelf that like if you just sit it on the spine, it'll flop open to the section on merit, grace and um justification,
Okay.
something
Yeah.
something like that, because that's where I spent most of my time
All you had to do
looking.
was just read Council of Trent, man.
I know, and now I realize that, and it's funny because I can remember like the church that I grew up in. They would always say, "Oh, look at this anathema here and this
You
anathema
gotta do
here."
all these works.
Yeah,
You're earning your salvation, man.
yeah, and I was like, "Hold on a second." Then I remember the first time I actually read through the Council of Trent, and I was like, yeah, I don't know that most of the people I grew up with would actually disagree with this. I
Yeah,
don't.
no, they wouldn't. No, we're
Yeah,
Catholics are grace alone.
right, right.
Yeah, and people, I even really awesome Catholics I love will argue for tooth and nail against your Presbyterian or something about
Mm.
grace alone, and it's like, guys, we sort of agree on that one thing in particular.
Yeah, we're on the same team.
Yeah.
No, but I had a long time of study and research, and then like slowly over time had like a mental, like you were talking about, like okay, this logically makes sense. I'm logically convinced of this. But then at that point, I was kind of like, oh, Catholicism's just another denomination you could pick, and I really like I was Presbyterian at the time, and I was like, I really like my Presbyterian church, and I have a bunch of friends, and like
Right.
the priest wear dresses and all the smells and bells, and I'm like, no, thank you. And then I had a huge, almost like you were talking about, a somewhat mystical experience, actually at my Presbyterian church over
Hmm.
the Eucharist,
Okay.
because it was like two parts, but the very last time they did the Eucharist, or well, not the Eucharist, the last time they did communion at the Presbyterian church, uh, I had the little cup. So it was like right after when COVID was kind of dying down a little bit, and it was the
Hmm.
little cups where like you peel back the top and there was the little cracker, and then you peel back the second part and there's your grape
I
juice.
never I never got to experience that as a
Oh,
Protestant.
you missed
That's
out, man.
wild.
You missed out. It's like to go communion. It was an interesting
Yeah.
time, but I remember I held it in my hand and I was like, I don't really agree that this is just an example, but like
Hmm.
I'm at the Presbyterian church, so let's win in Rome, right?
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and so I took it and I held it, and it was almost like I could hear Jesus saying to me, like, why are you taking part in this? You don't even believe it. And I'm offering you myself, body, blood, soul, and divinity, at the Catholic Church that's closer to you than this church is.
I
And then
didn't That's crazy. I
oh,
didn't have anything quite like that. In fact, the Eucharist, Mary, those were like the two things that I was hung up on for even like a year or two after I converted, after I was confirmed. So I don't know if that's sacrilege against a sacrament, I've confessed it. Don't worry. But I just, at the time of conversion, just before it, we were also going to a Presbyterian church, and I was watching Lost, and there was the African character who was a priest who was carrying around like this like club with Bible verses in it. And back in my Pentecostal days as a young child, my dad, as a punishment, he made us write Bible verses on our paddles. You know
Oh,
that
nice.
he would, you know, threaten to spank us with. He hardly ever. I don't think he ever actually did. But
Yeah.
it just that that scene, you know, those episodes in Lost really spoke to me. I was like, dang, Catholicism is so based and awesome. And I guess that's like another part, you know, the synapses in the brain, they like relate things to one another. And I guess
Yeah.
that's like another thing that led me on to make memes and to like use pop culture to like, you know, sort of red pill Zoomers and millennials and whatnot. But no, the Eucharist and Mary, those were like my last hangups that totally got over after my second conversion. That really made me do like a dive into the faith. And I was like, wow, I've like only witnessed, you know, a portion of the faith, you know, like a shadow of it, even though I converted to it. So I'd say probably the most mystical experience conversion wise for me was after around the time of my confirmation. I was really struggling with the question of like, you know, no salvation outside of the church. I didn't
Oh, yeah.
quite know that. I didn't even know that was a thing. I just, you know, there was something about worrying about Protestants and like my family members and all these people that that I didn't that I knew that weren't Catholic. I realized that there was a problem. You know, like if I had to go to confession and stuff, these guys aren't going to confession. Like maybe there's a serious danger for their souls. You know, because it's not just like believe in Jesus in the way that Protestants understand it. Um, but one of those nights that I was thinking about this, I had a dream where Christ appeared to me in the dream. And, you know, people might say this is ecumenical wishful thinking or whatever, but like Christ appeared to me in the dream and he was like, I see people's hearts, you know? So, uh, and within now as a mature Catholic, I understand within the grace of God and his work within these people's lives, you know, he sees people's hearts and he can pull them toward him or work with them beyond the sacraments if need be or whatever. So because he's not contained by the law. um, I just I don't know, it gave me a lot of hope, and that pushed me forward to my conversion, my
Yeah.
initial conversion. Yeah.
Huh. That's neat. I it's funny you mentioned that about the no salvation outside the church because I was watching there was a Eric Ybarra was
Hmm.
on Matt Fred. I don't know. It was a little short that like
Right.
popped up on
He,
my
he
phone.
he's really good for like Eastern apologetic stuff, like
Yeah.
orthodoxy and yeah.
So he was talking about this idea because he said that he had something similar where he was like really worried and concerned because like man, there's no salvation outside the church. Like, what if I'm outside the church, or what about all these other people outside the church? And he brought up the point. He was like, okay, but hold on, you got to remember that God is a father who loves us. And he was saying, you know, like if I love my kid and I see that my kid's trying to do what I told him to do and making his way and like pushing forward, why
Hmm.
in the world would I tell my kid, oh, sorry, like I see you're trying, but too bad you didn't make it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I,
So I mean, even on a deeper level, like my wife, she's Protestant. She's not even Protestant technically. She's non-denominational. I don't really like personally, I sort of, there's the historical Protestants.
Hmm.
I'll agree with the Redeemed Zoomer on there. There's the historic Protestants, and then there's the people that are more recent, non-denominational stuff. But anyway, she's non-denominational, and personally, I people ask me about it all the time. They're like, "Aren't you worried? Aren't you trying to convert her all the time?" And I've just sort of surrendered it to God. You
Yeah.
know, I make the best example of the faith as I can, and I live it devoutly. In a way personally that she can experience that and see it and learn about it and stuff. But I'm not pressuring her because people do that and you get divorced and stuff because other denominations they might not have the same respect for marriage, the sacrament of marriage
Yeah.
as Catholics do. Because if she dumps me, she could go. Find another man or whatever, but I would be screwed,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm not, if anything like that ever happened, I'd be like a monk or something. But anyway, I've surrendered that to God, and we had to do some counseling and stuff. After she had one of the babies, I think it was after my daughter was born, and I don't know if your viewers know this, but women get a little bit hormonal and stuff when they're pregnant, and even after they're
Yeah.
pregnant, they have like this postpartum period. And also, like, just portions of the year, they're a little hormonal and wild. But anyway, we went to couples counseling. It was really great, though. Actually, it
Yeah.
was a good idea. It was her idea. It was a good idea. So we went, and I talked to this therapist, and we both talked to this therapist, and I realized that there were motivations, because our faith came up, our difference in faith, our faith came up, and I realized that my inability to convert my wife was actually projected into social media and writing novels and all this stuff. So all this energy, this wild energy I had to like convert other people originated from not being able to convert my wife. And I truly believe that. And I think maybe, in God's wonderful will, that's part of it, is that
Yeah.
I have this like sort of unreachable itch or whatever. And that's driven me to, evangelize to a bunch of Zoomers and millennials on the internet. Because they're a lot easier to
Yeah.
convert than my stubborn wife. And I'm joking. If she watches this, I love her so much. I'm just messing around. But
Yeah.
I think that is a part of it. Surely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's so my I can remember when I was right before my wife and I got married. So we got married when we were both Protestant, and then we went to marriage counseling. Like the church that we went to, that we grew up in, they were like, "Hey," one of the pastors was like, "Hey, I'm happy to be the one who does y'all's wedding, but like you're gonna have to come to counseling. Just 3 sessions. We're gonna sit
Mm.
down and talk and make sure this is a good idea." And I was like, "Yeah." We both were like, "Yeah, that's a big deal. So let's make sure we're doing it right." And so during one of them, the pastor asked me, he was like, "Okay, so I know you're studying Catholicism. I had a really good friend of mine convert, and that's what started all of this in the first place." Um, and he was like, "I know you're studying Catholicism, but," he was like, "if you convert, Catholics have this real funny teaching about contraception. So, like, this is going to be a big deal. You guys, I mean, if you're going to convert, you got to know about this." And I was
That's
like, "No, no,
crazy.
no."
Yeah.
Yeah, I told him at the time, I was like, "Absolutely not." Like, I'm interested in learning more about it, but I don't think I'm going to convert. And so we get back out into the car, and my fiance at the time, now wife, we got in the car, and she sat down and she looked over at me and she was like, "If you're going to convert to Catholicism, I don't want to get married to you." And I was like, "Whoa." But
Wow,
I mean,
that's
and but I
intense, man.
yeah,
That's
she
intense.
does.
What denomination was she? Presbyterian?
No, she kind of, so she grew up all over the place. It was non-denominational, then Baptist, then like Southern Baptist, Pentecostal, all kinds of stuff.
And
But at
at
the
that
time,
time,
we were Baptist.
okay, that's pretty intense though.
Yeah.
My wife, she's like, yeah, sure, like we got married in the church and everything. She's like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, I'm gonna baptize her children. She's like, yeah, that's fine. That's totally cool. They can be Catholic. And I don't know. I tell people that non-denominationals are pretty easy to get along with, because there's a lot of people, and you and I are both Southern boys, so it's
Heck yeah.
I think it's like 85% of marriages in our area are like interfaith with
Yeah.
Catholics because there's like no Catholics. You're gonna have to marry a Protestant basically,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't know. I just yeah, that's interesting
Yeah.
because
Well,
she doesn't, from just superficially, she doesn't sound like somebody that would be so hellfire on Catholics. That's
she's very direct on
yeah.
some things. There's some things that she's like, I mean, there's no doubt about like, hey, this is where I stand on most positions. Now, since then, so I converted, and then I think it was like 2 years later she actually converted. So she's Catholic now. She's only
Okay.
been Catholic for like 9 months, I
And
think.
she didn't dump you or anything.
No,
It's
no,
pretty
because
cool.
I told her, because when we were in the car, I was being honest. I was like, "There's enough about Catholicism that I want to keep researching and seeing like, is this true or not?" But
Hmm.
at this moment, I have no desire to convert, and I really don't think that I'm going to. And
Wow.
then that was like,
What a sucker.
I know, but yeah, it was an interesting journey. But I'm glad that I am where I am now. Um,
Yeah.
you actually said something earlier. I feel like I have to say this. So your dad is the one who actually convinced me to start even the podcast and then the Instagram page.
Yeah, no,
Cuz
he's so influencing. He's just, I don't know. There's like a policy of life I have, and of course my actions are not perfect with this, and they still aren't. But whenever I do anything that my father wills, things happen. And I try my best to live by that, honestly, because my dad, the father son thing is such a beautiful, mystical, esoteric, even experience. And you have a son?
yeah, one.
Okay, was
One of
that
the six. One of the
okay? What?
six is a boy.
Wow, boy got busy. Anyway, I have one son, right? So it's just you get to experience that father son, Holy Spirit thing with your
Yeah.
kid. And I have a daughter, but it's just there's something else with the son. I don't
Yeah.
know what it is. And people might say I'm a misogynist or whatever, but it's not like that. It's just it's like a totally different
No.
relationship. And my father and I, we have that, because you're sort. I think ideally, and there's a lot of problems out there with the modern family and stuff, and so many people have this trouble, and I don't want to like alienize anybody, but ideally, my father and I are sort of like replications,
Mm.
and that's like what the Trinity is. You have like the perfect image of the Father is Christ, and I see that a lot in my son because he's like a religious zealot and he doesn't even speak words yet. He's running around the house with a crucifix and icons, and I'm like, you've got toys, but he has a preference. And my daughter didn't show that kind of interest like he does. So I'm picking up on some good signs. I think
Yeah.
the genetics are good. And I don't know. It's just such a beautiful experience, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. Cause I like, even with my son, so my son now is 4, and even with him, even at 4, it's like it's wild how much that thing that you just did was me. Or like if my son will do something and my wife will be like, was that you as a kid? Like when you were 4, were you doing this kind of
Yeah,
stuff
right.
too? And it's like, yeah, it was. I
Yeah.
don't, but I didn't teach him that. He just, I don't know. And it's the same thing for me too. Like I obviously have, well, so my wife and I have 5 children, and then my niece lives with us as well. I count her as
Okay.
one of the 6.
Okay.
So 6 total. But even, of all the girls that we have,
Your house is
obviously
so quiet. I don't hear anything at all.
everybody's asleep. That's why I was like, hey man, we got to
Yeah.
do this like
Right. We
later in
gotta
the
do
evening.
this after dark.
Yeah. No, it's either like nap time or after bedtime. Other than
No, I
that,
mean that's totally sensible. I do shows and things with other people, and whenever it's a woman, they're like, "Yeah, I'll hold the baby like in my lap or something." I'm like, "No, I can't do this right now. There's kids
yeah.
screaming out there." They're like, "No, it's fine."
Yeah. No. No, but it is interesting how like I don't know how much I can see in my son. And even obviously your dad is not my dad, but like it was that same kind of thing with me is, he had told me, "Hey, you ought to do this." Cuz I went on his somehow I found him on Instagram when he was interviewing a bunch of like converts and stuff.
Yeah.
And I reached out and I was like, "Hey, I'd love to do an interview with you." And then afterwards, he texted me and he was like, "You've got a great voice and you speak really well." And I never like as a kid, I was like, "Man, I sound a little bit goofy. I look a little bit goofy."
No,
And
I think it works. I think
yeah,
he's got it. You know, he actually I don't I don't want to interrupt your story, but
no, no, you're fine.
he actually singled out my wife like years before we even dated.
Wow,
Which
really?
that might sound kind of sus to some people, but like we were like 18-year-olds in high school and stuff or whatever, and we were like hanging out. We had we were more acquaintances, and we had other friends, and there were other girls I was like, you know, um, sort of interested in or whatever. But I also was a little interested in her, and I brought like there's me and like 3 or 4 other girls, and I brought them to my house because at my neighborhood there was like this fall festival of sorts. And hours afterward, after everybody had left or whatever, he was like, "That Kristen girl, you need to date her. She's a good girl. You it's gonna work out with her." And I was like, "What the heck? Like this is so random." Okay, Dad, whatever. And like years later, me and her happened to be like some of the few people left in town or whatever, and we did have the hots for each other back in school, and we reconnected, and I was like, "Yeah, this is a good idea." So that's how that happened. But it was just funny that I had like this weird, you know, father blessing like on this
Yeah.
relationship or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's like another point.
He
The father's will is supreme.
he picked her out for you, man. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that didn't have anything to do with my decision. It was just like this weird spiritual knowing. I don't know what to call it, but he can call it. He really can. He's
Yeah.
really good at that. And I'm actually trying to get him to speak at a lot more events. Like we
Yeah.
met at the Chick-fil-A on the way to North Carolina because he was doing one of his first speeches, and it's incredible. And I really got to get him out there.
Yeah. I really wanted to go. I have a large family though, so it's kind of hard to get away. And I travel for work too, so it's like, all right, well, you were already gone all week. Like you can't be gone on the weekend too.
Yeah, totally understandable.
But
Right.
I yeah, I mean, he it's the same thing with me. I think that what I've done, at least for me, is fairly successful. The whole time, whenever I started this, my whole thinking is like, man, even well, part of the reason why I started this is I had this head knowledge, and I had a couple other people too who told me, you have all this knowledge, you could probably share it with others, and that would probably be beneficial. And then my wife was like, all right, look, I love you and everything, and I like talking to you, but I don't like talking about the faith nearly as much as you do. So
Yes.
please go find other people to talk
Yes.
to.
Yes. That's another thing, is that like I had to share my
Yeah.
when the bomb went off, when I had my second conversion, I was like, I gotta talk to somebody. My dad blew me off. My wife is a non-denominational. I have to talk to people. So yeah, that was definitely a instigator or whatever, a catalyst, and I found tons of people. It's very. I found so many people to talk to. It's hard to talk to all of them. It's
Yeah.
uh, I understand like every single possible dialect of English now because there's friends from all over the world. You
Huh.
know.
Yeah, that's neat. So I have a couple of people that I've met through Instagram or YouTube or whatever, the podcast, that it is interesting to talk about the faith with other people, because like my wife was like, okay, I like sometimes I'll talk to you about this stuff, but I don't like I'm not talking to you on the same level that you do. You really get into the weeds.
Yeah.
Um and partially that's what I love doing with some of this stuff. And even through like memes, I think that I was talking to a friend of mine here in town, and I said, I kind of like I'm thinking about maybe moving more towards just like talking head videos or just explaining the faith, because I don't want to be too silly and goofy,
Hmm.
right? Like, because then nobody takes you seriously. And he was like, I don't know, man. I wouldn't neglect the power that like a good meme can do, because he said if you think about it, like memes get people to think about
Yeah.
things.
During COVID, Doctor Taylor Marshall and I, we were we were on a lot better terms, I should say. But there was a video he did. There was somebody, I forget where it was, but there's this guy in the government or whatever, and he was like, amen and a woman or whatever, and Taylor Marshall did like a whole hour long video on it. And then I made a meme because I was inspired. I was like, I'll make a meme about it. I just posted this image and like a caption, and I was like, X number of words, and none of them referred to God as a woman or whatever, right? Like just something like
Yeah.
silly and simple. And Dr. Taylor Marshall commented on it. He was like, uh, he something along the lines of like, wow, this perfectly sums up my entire wasted of an hour or whatever, because you spent like all this time talking, and I just had like this silly image and like a caption, and it brought just as much of a message.
Yeah.
And that kind of, that definitely encouraged me with the memes. And I totally embrace the title of propagandist. I think it's perfectly fitting. It sounds cool. And I'm the Lord's propagandist. And I'm cool with it. I can be silly. I can do silly things and use interesting means to accomplish this mission. But, it's a lot of fun. And it
Yeah.
works. It definitely works. I get, if I didn't get testimonies or whatever, I would try a different option or whatever. But it certainly has something, to it.
Yeah.
I think
I
memes are great.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a handful of times for me as well where people reach out and they'll say, man, I saw your meme on whatever, like, and I never thought about it that way. Like, I had never considered it. One of the things that it's funny, because for me too, I had never thought about this. When I was a Protestant, I never thought about like, how did you get your Bible? I just always start with the presupposition of like, nope, the Bible's the Bible. We've got our
It's just
66 books.
here. It's
Yeah,
just a thing that exists.
it's
It's
the
the
word of
earth,
God, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the word of God, and what do you mean? How did we get it? Like,
Yeah.
God gave it
That's a
to us.
that's a crazy question.
Yeah, and so I did one. I can't remember what it is now, but I know I've done memes before about like somebody had to put this thing together. Like it didn't just drop out of the sky like
Yeah,
God
right.
wrote the 10 commandments with his finger. He didn't write like, all right,
Hmm.
here's the books that belong and the books that don't. And then somebody had to pick that. Uh, and I've got a couple of messages on that and other topics of like, I never thought about this. And I would never think like putting some kind of goofy
I
video.
never thought about it as a Protestant. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I, we were both pretty young. Okay, we'll give ourselves that grace. We were pretty young. We converted pretty young,
Yeah.
relatively. But yeah, you don't think about it. You really don't think about it. And I will say, even as a Catholic, it opened a door to all sorts of speculations and things. Part of that conversion experience, which I would caution people for, because once you start questioning one thing, you're gonna go down a rabbit hole of other things. And I was like looking into like ancient, before Christ religions and like Adamic religions and religions of the Middle East and stuff, and Elohim and like where all this stuff possibly originated or whatever, and ancient civilizations, and that can also um, that can be difficult to cross to get across. But you can have some handy friends as a Catholic influencer or meme lord, at Catholic Answers, and just be able to DM them, or and they'll take care of some stuff. But yeah, it can be tricky. It can be a scary place, and I understand why a lot of people don't want to question where the Bible came from, because like it's like Pandora's box.
Yeah.
You question one thing, and then you become you start deconstructing everything around you, and that's freaky. So I
Yeah.
understand that.
It's like I this one time. So I'm a Jordan Peterson fan. And of some anyways,
I
Jordan
I,
Peterson fan.
I like him. I like him. I
Yes.
enjoy his videos.
Right, yes. So I went to one of his talks one time, and he I was over his first book, The 12 Rules for Life, and I don't remember which rule it was over, but he was talking about like um don't like all these presuppositions and things that you have. A lot of people don't want to get rid of those things because it means you got to go through the desert to get to the promised land,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And if you think of Israel, like they were wandering in the desert for a very long time, and it was not fun, and it was
Yeah,
not great.
it's
And even
totally
they were,
necessary. Yeah.
yeah, and even they in the middle of it were like, God just brought us out here to watch us die. Like, let's go back to Egypt. Sure, we were in slavery, but we had
Hmm.
everything we needed. So, like, let's just go back. Just go back to Egypt. Slavery is better than this.
Yeah,
But
no, yeah, definitely. You
and it's
got
the
some
same.
people rationing you out food, and now all of a sudden you're in the middle of the sunlight 24/7. Yeah,
Yeah, and it
definitely.
it it can be terrible. And it's kind of the same thing when you start questioning these things. That's like, man, I grew up just assuming this was the case always,
Yeah, it's
and
like
now,
Land of the Lost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you start to, it's like deer in the headlights kind of look like, oh my gosh, now, like I never should have started asking these questions because
Hmm.
now, like now what do I do?
Yeah. No,
I don't know.
it was a lot of fun for me. I think maybe what prevented my full conversion, my conversion of heart, was that sort of hesitance to question things. I just dove in. I was like, this is the faith of my ancestors. Like a billion people were Catholic before they were Protestant, and great grandma Cherry, she was freaking awesome, and there's no way she's in hell. I'm gonna be her religion, so i was
Yeah,
i was able to dive in off of that. And then my dad and we converted together, so like with his additional guidance and comfort levels with it, because we sort of, like tested each other and stuff in some ways with the faith. I was like, yeah, no, there's no question about it. I'll be Catholic.
Yeah.
But I didn't question the origins of things until I started wanting to refute my Protestant coworkers, which were another
Okay.
portion of my conversion of heart. I was like, I'm getting attacked at work. I need to be able to take up for myself. I can't just like, oh, I don't know. I can't be an ignorant person. I have to be knowledgeable. Certainly put them in their place. And it only took like a couple weeks of studying, and they stopped. They
Yeah.
stopped asking me questions.
That's funny. Yeah, I think that's good because like you posted something not long ago about like wanting to make more memes, but that are more like educational instead because
Yeah.
it's so easy.
I
Like,
wanted to get back to my roots.
yeah,
Because my,
yeah,
my, my roots are more educational, and they're kind of like the Baltimore Catechism with like a
okay,
rebranded modern face, for the brain rot and for the Zoomers. And it's so easy to get carried away with like politics and that kind of stuff, especially with the election and Donald Trump and all of that. Is so easy to get sucked away into it. And I'm like, I still get like, I feel the draw, but yeah, no, I'm trying desperately to stay in my
yeah.
lane.
Well, sometimes I notice too. There's a lot of times where they'll post memes and things, and they're like really popular, but they're always like when you're putting people down, but you're not really sharing any
Right.
information. It's like, man, what are you doing here?
Yeah, like um like rage baiting is what we
Yeah.
call it in the meme industry. Is you
Okay.
rage bait. You're like, I'm just gonna put just a little bit out there that'll piss everyone off, and it goes totally viral. I personally have benefited from that. I've had memes that I've posted that have gotten millions and millions and millions and millions of views. And that's insane. That's
Yeah.
totally insane. And then somebody comes along and they're like, you know, uh, Christ says you're going to be judged for every idle word. I'm like, oh, I'm like, no, he'll
uh,
understand. And I'm like,
yeah.
no, I mean, maybe I should do better. So, it's just it's such a puzzle though, because you're trying to
Yeah.
keep up with the algorithm, which is like this satanic robot that wants to drain you of all of Christ and just turn you into some hateful creature. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to be educational and filled with Christ and also be viral.
Yeah.
It strains you sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know. And, sometimes I'll post something like a few weeks ago, I posted a reel. I found like a music video of Linkin Park, and I captioned it. I was like, uh, something about Ecclesiastes, like me whenever I read the book of Ecclesiastes or whatever. And that went viral. And so many people love it, and there's nothing ragey about it. There's nothing wrong about that meme. It's totally relatable. People It enforces people's desire to read the Bible. Some people probably picked up Ecclesiastes after seeing that meme. And that's a perfect meme, and I just wish that God would make it easier so that I could think of these memes to post. But no, like Satan is like, it feels like Satan's even closer to my ear, and he's like, no, rage bait the Protestants one more
Yeah.
time. And I just like dive right in. It's I'm imperfect, and it's
Yeah.
a very difficult field. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, uh, like I said, I feel like an outsider that I've been kind of like pushed into this group of meme folks, meme lords, I guess. I don't know what to call them, but I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just like, hey, man, I'm here, but I guess like I don't know what to do. But it's interesting though because there is like that aspect of you want more people to see your stuff because like you're putting out good information and you're thinking like the more people that see this,
Yeah,
who
right.
knows who it could help, and who knows, like maybe the next person that sees this thing might be one of the guys that sends me a message that says, hey man, I joined OCIA this year because I saw your thing and it really got me asking questions, and now I want to
Sometimes
know more.
people message me about that, and it's like my worst, horrible, like evil, rage baiting post. And I'm like, I'm in, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck? You're not helping me right now. I'm
Yeah.
trying to be better.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance trying to figure out like, okay, well, this is the kind of stuff that goes popular, that goes
Right.
crazy, and then, but also like being Christ-like online as
Mhm.
well. It's an interesting balance, and I've seen some people like get like you post that one thing that's just rage baity, and then you get a bunch of debate, and then so there's a bunch of comments, and then it sends it to more people, and then more people comment, and then it just goes crazy, and then they're, I'm sure they're thinking, yeah man, that one was really good, how else can I make them mad? I mean,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
last one went crazy, so let's do it again this week.
Yeah.
um I don't know, it's an interesting balance to strike.
It's difficult. It's really difficult. And I don't know, like, this is going to sound egotistical, and it's not meant to be. My memes will not stand the test of time. Like 1,000 years from now, if we make it that far, they won't be inspected by people. I don't think
Yeah.
so. But like Saint Paul, he wrote letters to like what, a few dozen people, couple hundred people, maybe 1,000 people, you know, and I'm here writing letters every day to like thousands, potentially millions of people. And no, it's great. It's absolutely insane. It's really crazy because um, all these greater saints, their words last through time, and we still use them. Um, but like in this particular time and space, you and I and others that have like this calling to make content are I don't know, we have like a huge platform that never before existed. Like never before could St. Paul speak to, half the planet,
Yeah.
or whatever, maybe even more. And that's one of my prayers though, personally, is that like um I always pray that God can use me as a tool to reach everyone. I don't limit it. I don't say like, God, let me reach millions or billions. I'm like, let me reach the whole world.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's a very bizarre time. It's very
Yeah.
bizarre. It's a
It is
very
weird.
weird time,
Yeah.
and I feel like it won't last very long. I feel like somebody's gonna unplug the internet one of these days or something. But it's a crazy weird time to be in. You
It
know?
is. It is. I would have never thought. The Malaysian Catholic. Are you familiar with his page on Instagram?
Yeah, no, it sounds familiar. I've got
Okay.
I've got a ton of Malaysian friends and Indonesian
Okay.
friends, so like, yeah, I think
Yeah.
I am. I
So
probably follow him.
he's one of the ones that he was one of the first people that was like literally on the other side of the world, that I just remember thinking the first time we were messaging back and forth. I did a Instagram live with him like a year ago or something like that at this point, and I remember thinking in the middle of it like, there's some kind of like weird caveman-y feeling that's like, this isn't right. You shouldn't be talking to a guy in Malaysia like 12 hours ahead of you through a cell phone, and you guys, I don't know, it was weird. So
It's pretty bizarre. It is weird, man. And another bizarre thing about it is that you're doing this work for the Lord, you're evangelizing, and a lot of it's anonymous. Like you don't have any clue who these people are. You've got like a friend in Taiwan that's like a radical Catholic. You got a friend in Tokyo. You've got a friend and somewhere in like Argentina. You've got some friend out in some island that you've never even heard of. And then like you all chat and stuff, and then you've got friends that are doing this and they're 60. You've got friends that are doing it and they're like freaking like 15. It's like, how who gave you an app? Like, why are you even on the internet? And it's just it's an actual circus. It's a circus, you
Yeah.
know. But we
It's
need
like,
everybody, I think.
yeah. That's the other thing too. I know some people are like, well, and I think you've posted stuff about this before where some people are like, "Man, I really tried, but I just don't think it's my thing. Like it didn't go anywhere. I didn't get any traction." And for me, like I wasn't necessarily trying like and I don't know that many people start off like I'm going to have this big Instagram page and I'm going to have 200,000 followers, and I think people just like put stuff out there and then eventually it takes off. And that's exactly what happened for
Yeah.
me, cuz I mean, I think I my page is at just shy of 15,000 followers. I would have never thought in a million years that I would be there. Like I just
You know that Homelander meme where he's like standing in the crowd and he's like, "Whoa,
yeah.
all right, yeah!"
Yeah.
Like everybody's cheering him on. That's how it was. Like I posted something, and I I like took a meme from like when I started. I took a meme that was like 10 years old, which is a no no. You're supposed to use stuff that's like up to date, and I did that, and people loved it. I was like, okay, cool, people like this. And then there's like this little dopamine devil that awakened in my brain. I was like, ooh, likes, you know, comments.
Yeah.
And then it like encouraged me to keep making memes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent. I've had people reach out, and I'm sure you have too, that people will go, "Oh, well, how did you get started? Like what did you do? What are the methods? What are the," and I'm like, "Man, I'm just to be honest with you, I find stuff on the internet and like something's funny and I think, "Oh, this would be perfect."
Yeah.
Or like I
Something
hear
just
something,
something just like
yeah.
hits you. Something speaks to you. Um And I hate it though because sometimes I go through a dry spell and I'm like scrolling. I'm like, please give me something to use. And I'm like looking through like hours of footage and
Yeah.
it's insane. And I'm like, what am I doing? But like, you know, like Steve Jobs, I think it was like, if you can't figure something out, take like a 10-minute walk, you know, and then come back to it. And that certainly works. And with my job, I get to leave my desk and walk around and stuff. And like, whenever I do that, I'm like, whoa, like, how have I not made this meme like 15 times already? Because it will be like something, you know, that I've never covered before. I'm like, this is hilarious subject material. And like, I have to have it. And that's another thing with the content creation is that like once you have that spark or whatever, it's like, I gotta put it out. I gotta make it. I gotta do it right now. Or me personally, I'm like, I gotta beat everybody to it. It's like, what am I? Like, no one else has made this content. Like, why do I think that like it's just gonna magically be stolen by somebody? But it does happen.
Yes.
Weirdly enough, it does happen.
Okay, this brings me to I have a personal question that I have to ask you. I don't know if I'll put this part in here or not. I probably will leave it, but I have noticed, I don't know what the rules of engagement are within the meme world, but it seems like there's some weird there's been a couple times where I've posted something and I was like, "Man, this is a great idea." And then all of a sudden like a week later it's like that looks really familiar. And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I basically did the same thing." Like they didn't copy and paste, but it's like basically the same wording
It
with a little bit different video.
you just I think that you just have to sort of sacrifice all of it, and once you post it, it's out. It's just
Yeah.
out of the box. I have people that have, uh, you know, legitimately stolen my jokes and material. They'll recreate it with their own assets or whatever, but it's like it's 100% mine. It's like word for word and the same things or whatever, and then there's drama and stuff. But there's also plenty of occasions where I see something on the internet and I'm like, wow, that's a great meme. That's a great edit. I'm going to take it and I'm going to, repurpose it. And it's kind of the same thing, like
Yeah.
I'm inspired by somebody else's work. That's just the nature of memes in general, is that we're all, uh, it, there's, there's no such thing as a stolen meme, unless you cover someone's trademark and you post it as your own. That's, that's the only time that I would consider it stolen. If you're changing the captions or changing things around, or if somebody else does it's fair game.
Yeah. I know the first time it happened to me, I was like, no, this is ridiculous, because like that same kind of like the dopamine devil you were talking
Yeah,
about, like, no, they're gonna get more likes and comments
yeah,
than
yeah,
me, and
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah,
I had
like
to.
I posted. There was a period of time, and what's funny is that like I perfectly remember what I was doing and where I was at when I was making these memes. But there were these memes where I was putting Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant by team, and then I was like
Oh yeah.
putting some kind of subject matter, and then like little captions between the three. And that's just something that just came to mind, and it was trend setting. Like people were making that meme all over the religious sphere of the internet, and I was like, these guys are stealing my swagger or whatever, like these guys are thieves.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just I think it's kind of cool. You
Yeah.
can take it one or two ways. You can either be outraged that people are stealing from you, or you could be like, "Wow, I'm a visionary." Like I came up with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
One day I'll tell my kids that was me.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
those
No.
those those memes you share now. Yeah, I'm the one that put it all together.
That's right.
I was a
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
Yeah. Well, and two, I after this that one incident, I thought about it and I was like, like really in the grand scheme of things, at the end of the day, why do you even make the memes? And it's like, well, the whole reason you started was to get the truth out more. And so like if that's what you're doing, then if that's your goal and somebody else kind of takes and mimics what you're doing, it doesn't like
Right.
outright steal the exact same thing.
And
That
I'll say a lot of hippies and drug users, they'll use the term ego death, you know,
Oh yeah.
but ego death is kind of based, and I've experienced a little, not currently. Currently, I'm very ego driven, but there was this beautiful time period where I had like a ego death for like a period of months, and it was profound. And you get out of confession during the ego death, and you go out to the streets and you get in your car and you start driving. You see like women in like yoga pants and like short shorts, and you're like, yeah, like before the ego death, you're like, they should be wearing burqas. And then after the ego death, you're like, you know what? They just don't know, Lord. They just don't know. And you're like praying for them and stuff. And like within this ego death, in terms of Christianity, there's like this like death to self, and like a marriage of like a communion of saints, and even like the church militant, where you're all part of this body, this body of Christ. And I think it's a really cool thing. And I think as far as like our topic with social media and stuff, that's a very important mindset to try to develop, is like this death of yourself, like it's not you, it's the body of Christ, like anything you accomplish is for the body of Christ. It's the body of Christ that's doing this. And if other people, other portions of God, other portions of the body of Christ accomplish the same thing or use the same things, like more power to them.